College is a wild ride for young adults, and their mental health often suffers. This podcast addresses the inner battles many college students struggle with. You're listening to Normalize It Forward, where we have raw, unfiltered conversations about young people's biggest mental health problems, how to handle them, and how to achieve a more resilient mind. Time to get rid of those heavy burdens and focus more on self-love and care. Here is your host, Marc Lehman.
Welcome, everybody. Today is a day where we're going to talk about mental health and wellness. My name is Marc Lehman, and this project is called Normalize It Forward. Today, we are welcomed by a fantastic guest, Ellen Bradley Ganus. And Ellen, I have to say, as I was reviewing all of the things that you've done, online business expert, entrepreneur, athlete, networker, super passionate individual, and certainly mom, I think, is at the top of the list, right? You've done so many different things. I wonder if I could toss the ball to you and have you tell us a little bit about who is Ellen Bradley Ganus.
Sure. Well, for the sake of the viewers and the subject at hand, which is all about mental health and wellness for families, for children, and so on and so forth, I do many different things. However, everything is motivated by my love of family and wanting to be the best mother that I could be. My children are now grown. Today's my son's birthday. He's 22. And my daughter is 25. So even though they're no longer living at home, we still work and cultivate this relationship at every new stage of life. But my background is as an actress. I've been in the arts my whole life. I met my husband on a TV show when I was 18 at Northwestern University. And then I had what feels like so many lives since then. For the last 24 years, I've really had the great pleasure of aligning with a health and wellness company that has allowed me to provide solutions for people that are looking for foundational elements to living their best life, meaning that they want to look better, they want to feel better, they want to be better. And I think that what I really learned over the last few decades is that when we don't have the key nutrients in our body working right, it doesn't matter how many affirmations we do. It doesn't matter how many counselors we see. But if we're going home and we're relying on that bag of Fritos, you are what you eat. And part of mental wellness, as it relates to what I've done, is really about that nutritional foundation for well-being. So I'm also, I still work in the arts. I'm a flamenco dancer by night, and I'm producing a film right now, and I'm still acting. But I've always had a love of personal development in every aspect of it, which led me to become a triathlete in the sports world, and then allowed me to continue to be physical and active in the dancing world. Yeah, so the last few decades, though, relative to nutrition and mental wellness, has really been my great focus.
Yeah, I mean, you're a person who, whenever I've asked you what you're up to, you never say, just hanging around, you're always doing things, which is great thing. You're doing wonderful things.
Thank you.
So that kind of leads us to the first topic I want to chat about today, self-care. I mean, self-care is so important when it comes to mental health and wellness. And I guess I'm curious just to sort of throw the topic out to you and ask, what is self-care and why is it so important?
Self-care is everything about cultivating a great relationship with yourself. And I think people have it backwards. I think we're seeking outside validation on a regular basis, especially with social media and likes, and comments, and, what's the interaction there and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, if we don't have a relationship with ourselves, if we don't feel good when the door closes, if we don't feel good when we are alone and we can't enjoy being alone, then we're not going to have very successful relationships outside of self. So self-care is honoring yourself, being true to yourself, building a relationship with yourself where you're able to identify the pain, you're able to identify the joy, you're able to make strategic changes in your daily routines to stay better attached to that path that is helping you live your best life.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, it's Self-care is one of those things that everybody defines a little differently. And I think you're right. In many ways, we've got decisions to make as a human being. And some of those decisions that we make aren't healthy. Some of them really are. And for some reason, selfish has gotten like such a negative, tone in our community that it makes it hard, I think, sometimes for people, especially parents, to kind of step out and go to the gym or step out and go to a therapist or go do things that we know to be really healthy for them, right?
When you're exhausted and stressed out and not taking care of yourself as a parent, you cannot be patient with your kids. You cannot be as loving as you're capable of being, because if you don't feel good, how can you behave like you're feeling good?
Yeah. No doubt.
And it really comes down to sharpening the saw. When we take care of ourselves, we're at a better place to take care of others.
Absolutely. So, my next thought about self-care is sort of the fundamentals that I talk about. And I know you feel so passionate towards the eating, sleeping, and exercise, kind of doing those things and managing all three. I feel like every human being, including me, by the way, has trouble managing all three on a regular basis. But we know in the backs of our brains, that's the kind of key. Like if we can do those three things, we're generally in a healthier place.
Yeah.
So I ask you, why is it so hard to manage all three?
Well, nobody could do everything all at once. And what they say is the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So, I think that it has to do with understanding that if we're consistent, even if it's 1% a day, that 1% can grow into 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%. It all starts with very, very small incremental changes, but the key is the consistency. And if you think of your life like a pizza pie and you divide it into sections, ask yourself, how much am I moving? Am I sitting at a desk all day? Am I not moving my body? Am I not helping my cardiovascular health? Am I not getting that blood through my body so that my muscles feel agile and good? Our vitality is directly connected to movement.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't mean that you have to be a triathlete. It doesn't mean that you have to compete in anything. It just means that every day you do something, even if it begins with taking a walk. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about how do you manage it by focusing on those different slices of the pizza pie, just a little bit each day. Maybe eliminating a little bit of sugar in your diet. It doesn't mean you're going to do a whole different dietary change, but maybe start with one thing, maybe eliminating a little bit of white flour, a little bit of sugar, maybe having your protein, before your carbs, maybe decreasing a little bit of the calories that you're taking in a day. Choose one aspect of eating. Choose one aspect of exercise. Help yourself go to bed maybe 15 minutes earlier than you would have. Maybe wake up 15 minutes or go to bed earlier, but also wake up 15 minutes earlier. How can you give yourself more time in the day, especially busy families, right?
Yep.
We have to find the time that everybody else doesn't need us.
Right.
So it's the consistency of small incremental changes and then focusing on all those different aspects of self-care.
Like you said it really well. Your kids are very similarly aged to my kids. And, we've been through that roller coaster of we don't have a moment. We don't have a moment to do these things. And so I love how you said that one bit at a time, one step at a time. So it's not so overwhelming. Because let's face it, when we're overwhelmed, we just throw our hands up and don't do anything, right?
That's right. That's right. Like fear, uncertainty, and overwhelm lead to the same thing.
Absolutely.
Inaction.
Absolutely.
Inaction. So you got to break that cycle. You have to do some sort of a pattern interrupt to get you out of that. It also has a lot to do with who you hang around with and what your circle is like.
No doubt. Yeah. I mean, it's certainly healthier individuals tend to breed, healthier individuals. So, I think the more people surround themselves with like-minded individuals that way, the healthier they become. Speaking of health, the phrase mental health, I'm always fascinated by this. Like when I say mental health, what do you think of?
I think of my ability to process life, engage with life, and be joyful in life on a regular basis.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a really good definition. So often I interact with young adults or their parents, and physical health, we got covered. Like everybody knows what physical health is, broken leg, we go to the doctor, we got that. When it comes to mental health, right now, anxiety and depression are at an all-time high for young people. And, my area of work is often on college campuses. And to me, the amount of kids that are either anxious or depressed is overwhelming. It's going up and up each year for lots of different reasons. I guess I wonder, from your perspective, Ellen, what do you think some of the causes might be that have led to such incremental rises in mental health for kids?
I think there is so little human interaction. I think that we are being machine taught. We're socializing on machines. And I think that it has completely broken down the ability for people to know how to communicate, know how to express themselves on all levels. I think that it's skewed our ability to trust, because we don't even know what it is to have a real relationship. We're measuring relationships by who ghosted me this week. And that's, you know what I mean? So I think that I think that has led to where we are today. Now, of course, we're living in unprecedented times politically.
Yeah.
And with good reason, people are stressed. It's a very, very difficult time. But I want to share something with you that I wasn't going to bring up, but I think it's important as a mother, as we talk about anxiety and as we talk about moving forward. When my son was 2 years old, which is why his birthdays are always so special to our family. When my son was 2 years old, he had a vaccine, diphtheria and tetanus. And I was on the National Vaccine Association. And I was trying to help the Vaccine Association make vaccines safer for children.
Mm-hmm.
And in an ironic moment, we took this vaccine, and then 2 days later, my son's bone marrow stopped working, and we were hospitalized at Children's Hospital in ICU for a 4-year journey.
Oh my goodness.
And so he had no white cells, he had no red cells, he had no platelets. If you touched him, he would bleed to death. And the only opportunity for him to stay alive was, at that time, a bone marrow donation, which had to be from a sibling, and my daughter wasn't a match. Wow. So when we talk about stress, I'm sure that every parent here can only imagine what it would be to be faced with a 2-year-old in a hospital with a PICC line to his heart and not knowing if each day is going to be the last. So we as a family, my daughter was in kindergarten, and we lived every single day not knowing what the next day would bring. And honestly, he's just a miracle. Wow. We did forms of chemo that took his body down to nothing, and then slowly reticulocytes came back, and then red cells came back. So a lot of gratitude and a lot of life.
Yeah.
And a lot of trying to figure out how to move forward from there, releasing the fear of what we experienced, and deciding, how are we going to live our life? What's important?
Yeah.
I think everybody on this call has to say to themselves, what's important to me? Yeah. What brings me joy? How is it that I am contributing to my family, to my friends, to my community, to the world? Because it's through our contribution and sense of purpose that we can rise above everything. It was coming out of that journey that made me link arms with this company that was forming in order to educate about the perils of toxicity in our world. And then by cleansing the body at a cellular level and rebuilding the body, we had a better chance at staying alive. And I made that my mission. And that turned into the whole nutrition of how we feel, how we look, how we, all of the stuff that I talked about. So coming out of that was a complete paradigm shift. And I think everybody needs a personal paradigm shift. I think they need an exploration of that inventory of where have I been, how am I feeling, and what's got to change. And it's up to us to create those changes. And when it comes to children, the adults in their life that love them have to be the ones to foster the communication and try to dig in and find out what's going on in your life. And when we got out of the hospital, I wanted to just expose my children to everything. I wanted to uncover their talents. They were never on screens. They were never playing video games. And not that there's anything wrong with that, everything in moderation. Mm-hmm. But we started teaching my son piano from the hospital bed, and he and my daughter ended up concert pianists. And we gave him dance classes, and he then started playing baseball, and he's now playing for the Big Ten at Northwestern, hoping for this final year for a draft. He ended up playing in the Pan American Games, representing Team USA at 12. But my point is, by exposing them to things that they loved, and then helping them stay the course and develop those talents, while other kids were getting bored and just existing on social media platforms, they were busy honing a craft. They were busy getting better at something they enjoyed. They were entering into their own competitions to test their skill levels and give themselves a way in which to compete against themselves. And they were interacting with other kids that were doing similar things. And we were interacting with other families that had that same priority. And I know it's more and more difficult now than it was then, because like I said, everything is machines now. But you've got to find your space to play a sport, to play an instrument, to dance to the song, to go out with a friend, to have conversations. And I really think that that's what most people are choosing to not do.
Yeah, no, I think very well said. First of all, thank you so much for sharing that story with all of us. Your son's first name, if you don't mind me asking?
His name is Tyler.
Tyler. Well, let's celebrate his birthday today. Happy birthday, Tyler. What an amazing, resilient young man and resilient family. I mean, you guys have been through a lot. And I like so much of what you had to say. I told you, I wrote down passionate. Like when I was talking to Ellen, I wrote down passionate. She's passionate. But no, I mean, look, as a mom and as a parent, I mean, you said it best. I mean, we have moved away from this type of interaction, this direct interaction. And, look, I'm a virtual therapist, I see people in my office, I see people online, and I'm the first one to say nothing's going to replace in-person connection. When I talk to young people and they won't go into a store to talk to a store manager about, employment opportunities, it makes me sad, because I also know, Ellen, and you know this, that when kids go off to college and they don't have that ability to talk to people, how do we as adults expect them to make friends?
That's exactly right.
So they go from like a bunch in high school, let's say you got a social kid in high school, they go from a bunch in high school to none. And they go to college and it's like, whoa, whole new world, right? So I agree with you. I think a big part, and one of the biggest reasons why we're here today, is I want to normalize the conversation and get young people and get parents to understand it's okay to have struggles. It's okay to have challenges. What's more important is, what are you doing about them? And what steps are you taking to help find, as you were saying, your happiness in this world? Because happiness comes in all different sizes and shapes, right?
It has to be defined by the individual. What makes a person happy is going to be different.
Absolutely.
And, a large part of mental wellness relative to everything we're talking about is mindfulness.
Totally.
I raised my kids as yogis. We're all yogis. So meditation was a part of our life from the minute they were born. And I highly recommend that as something to explore. And there's great apps like Balance. I think you can get it still for free. And it's guided visualizations. And they even have sensorial meditations where your phone will vibrate in your hand according to the gongs, according to the storms, according to whatever the ambient meditation is. And it's such a great way to get your feet wet. And even if you don't know anything about it, just start some practice of getting quiet with yourself.
Yeah, it's a tool. It's a tool that, that, let's face it, we could all use additional tools. Anxiety levels as high as they are nowadays, having those types of things. I mean, clearly every kid goes to school with their phone in their pocket. So like to have an app on that phone that teaches them how to do things like that.
Yeah.
Lots of people aren't experienced with that. So I appreciate the suggestion. That's fantastic. I think the more tools kids can have, the greater their wellness gets, and things like, going off to school doesn't have to be so daunting, You mentioned, mindfulness. I think time management is also mindfulness, right?
It is huge. It's something I've talked for many, many years.
Yeah. So let me ask, what are some things, Ellen, as an individual, you do to manage your time?
I always make my schedule the night before. And I always leave space in the day for the unexpected and welcome unexpected miracles. I really do. So I try to not overschedule. I leave what I call blank space, but I make my schedule the night before and I time block according to activities.
Yeah.
So time blocking might be the first 2 hours of the day, my meditation, my workout, my journaling, my gratitude, uninterrupted no matter what. So you have to have those. Yeah. You have to have the time blocks that are non-negotiables for yourself. And then, of course, you have to look at what are your income-producing activities. I'm an entrepreneur.
Yep.
So a little bit different from a corporate job. If you have a corporate job, you're going to have a task list and you're going to have when you arrive, when you go home, and what your checkoff for the day is. For me, it's about, what are my income-producing activities? What is, growing my pipeline? What is, all different aspects of what complete my day. But I do this, I make a schedule the night before, I time block, I make sure there's empty space in the day. And every night before I go to bed, I do the same thing so that I have the schedule. It's funny. Some people feel like if I make a schedule, I'm going to feel like I'm in jail or something. But when you make a schedule, it actually gives you more free time.
Does. I agree. Gives you the bumpers of the day, so you sort of know. Yeah, I totally agree. I'm 100% on board with what you just said. Let me ask you this. Your kids are, you said 23 and 20?
22 and 25.
Out of curiosity, just from your own observation, what do they do for time management?
They do the same thing. I mean, I have a list of my son in elementary school, and he would always put on his list, at the end of the list, he would always put, have fun.
I love it.
And they took great responsibility for how they were planning their day. And my daughter, Spencer, worked really well with calendars and stickers and making it visually appealing. And then she could see, this is going to be one of my dance classes. And she could look forward to that. If she had a paper that was due and maybe she was having to put time into something she didn't want to do, she could always look at the schedule and know it was coming. But it really is the key. It's the night before planning the day.
I love it.
So you'll have your activities for the month, but really nailing down that daily schedule the night before is everything.
It's a great suggestion. I love that you make time for things that pop up, unexpectedly. And I love what your son did, have fun. I mean, I think if we're not having fun in our day, we're missing out, and tomorrow's another day, sure. But guess what? We can have fun today. And I think that making some time, making some space, really making it important to take care of ourselves, I think is just so unbelievably important. Well, this has been awesome. I appreciate you making the time today, Ellen. I really do. I know you're busy. And this is such a great topic to talk through. And I feel like you and I could talk for hours about this, but I know we don't have hours. So let me just ask you this. Part of the project, Normalize It Forward, is I'd like to continue the conversation. So one of the things I'm asking everybody is to nominate a friend, a coworker, a relative that you think would be helpful to talk through an interview on this platform and discuss health and wellness. Do you have anyone in your circle that you think would be helpful?
I think it would be terrific if you wanted to interview my daughter. When she was younger, when she was 13, we did a campaign called Bridging the Gap. And this was about the relevance of young people's voice as well as the relevance of middle-aged. And I think that we're living in a world right now where young people who have access to everything sometimes feel that the adults in their life don't really have important messages anymore. They can figure it out and they can find it on their own. But through the campaign I did with my daughter and the work we did when she was younger, there was this very interesting place where we meet in the middle and we respect each other and we listen to each other and we learn from each other. And, as a philosophy major, literature major, she's got a really wide net of education and experience that will lend to sharing some really important thoughts about the world today as a young person, but also someone that has grown up in a family that was extremely mindful, that also went through some very, very difficult challenges. So I would suggest that.
I would love that. I would love that. I would love that. And you've got my information. So put her in touch with me and we'll set something up, because as you said, the life of a young person, I mean, sometimes I feel like a dinosaur when I say this, but it's so different than our generation, And when you look at sort of the things they go through and the challenges that they have. So one of the biggest reasons why I love working with young adults is helping them through that process. So I really appreciate it. I look forward to meeting with her and interviewing her. And again, Ellen, thank you so much for your time and energy today. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
That's all for this episode of Normalize It Forward. May this conversation serve as a reminder that you are never alone in facing your mental health struggles. There are always people who can help. To dive even deeper into our journey of normalizing one of the biggest issues young people face, check out more episodes of the show at youareheard.com. It's UAREHEARD.com. Continue gaining access to the right tools, the best resources, and the most insightful advice to achieve positivity, mindfulness, and genuine happiness.